The U.S. financial markets keep crashing, and investors are blaming Donald Trump. Hello, everybody. David Shuster reporting. The trend line here at the end of 2024 has been horrific. The markets have been nosediving, and now even the Federal Reserve, which sets bank borrowing rates, is adding to the fears about Trump. Recently, it all led to this.
Tonight, the financial markets are reeling from another big sell-off. The Dow plunged more than 1,100 points. It's now fallen for 10 straight days, something that had not happened in 50 years. The Nasdaq fell by more than 3.5%, and the S&P nearly 3%.
The latest drop came in the wake of a decision by the Federal Reserve to lower rates once again, which it does when inflation is going down. However, this time, there was also a warning. Here's part of the report on CBS News.
So as expected, the Federal Reserve cut rates today by 0.25 point, bringing down the key borrowing rate. But what tanked the market was investors' concern about what Chairman Powell had to say about 2025.
And what Powell said is that the Fed expects inflation under the Trump administration to go up. And the Fed chair pointed out that Donald Trump's plans have triggered a lot of economic uncertainty. So instead of being aggressive with rate cuts in 2025, which would essentially heat up the economy, members of the Federal Reserve are taking their foot off of the gas thanks to Trump inflation fears.
They're writing down more uncertainty around inflation. And, you know, the point about uncertainty is it's kind of common sense thinking that when the path is uncertain, you go a little bit slower. It's not unlike driving on a foggy night or walking into a dark room full of furniture. You just slow down, and so that may have affected some of the people.
Yes, the chairman of the Federal Reserve just compared Donald Trump's economic policies to driving on a foggy night or walking into a dark room full of furniture. In other words, the Fed expects Trump could cause an economic catastrophe. So instead of heating up the economy with lower rates, the Fed now expects to possibly need to cool down Trump's inflation. Investors and traders did not like what they heard from Powell, and it added to the existing pessimism that many analysts already have about Donald Trump's impact on the U.S. economy. Donald Trump is promising to carry out mass deportation starting on day one of his 2025 administration. But deporting even a fraction of the estimated 11 million undocumented migrants would cost U.S. law enforcement hundreds of billions of dollars. When the U.S. government borrows and spends that kind of additional money, inflationary pressures soar. Also, Trump is planning to cut taxes for the wealthy and lower the corporate tax rate. According to economic experts, those efforts would also balloon the deficit and spark inflation. But there is every indication that Donald Trump does intend to increase the budget deficit. One of the latest indications came from congressional negotiations over a budget bill to keep the government funded. Trump demanded the bill include a provision that lifts the debt ceiling. And because the first negotiated bill did not have that provision, Donald Trump instructed Republicans to kill it.
Trump tells our chief Washington correspondent, John Karl, there will be a government shutdown unless Congress eliminates or extends the debt ceiling.
So just to be clear here to our viewers, at the same time that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are railing against this bill for including too much spending, he's also asking Congress to increase the amount that he can borrow, because what he knows is that it would be very politically difficult when he takes office, when Congress is fully controlled by Republicans. It would be very difficult politically for that debt ceiling issue to be addressed, so he wants it to get done while President Biden is still in office.
The second negotiated resolution to fund the government includes what Donald Trump wants.
We now have the text of an agreement to the government spending bill, and it does include extending the current debt ceiling. It was going to be expiring in January of 2025. This piece of legislation would extend it for another 2 years into January of 2027. That takes a huge lift off the shoulders for Republicans next year, who are looking at a difficult battle to reauthorize it. Also just gives a little bit more breathing room, not having to worry about that fiscal cliff for a little bit longer.
So next year in 2025 and the following year in 2026, it appears Donald Trump will not have to worry about debt ceilings blocking his policy plans. And again, those deficit-busting plans include tax cuts for the wealthy, which would cut back on government revenues, and deporting migrants, which would require new government spending. More spending, less revenue means higher deficits. Economists say that's a financial ticking time bomb that could wreck the economy. Inflation, of course, could also torch the economy by raising prices, increasing unemployment, and sparking consumer chaos. And again, the Federal Reserve bankers are now saying there is a greater chance in 2025 of inflation than not. And Donald Trump still hasn't taken office yet. So just the fears and anticipation of what Trump is going to do are already dragging down the markets and causing investors to get more anxious and skittish. Remarkable. During the 2024 presidential campaign, Donald Trump promised to fix an economy that was broken. But by nearly every measure, stock market growth, working wages outpacing inflation, gross domestic product, job creation, low unemployment, and more, the U.S. economy was solid. And all the data shows that since the pandemic ended, the U.S. economy has performed better and outpaced every other country in the world, including with lower inflation than every other country in the world. But Donald Trump convinced tens of millions of Americans the economy needed to be fixed. So in 2025, Donald Trump is going to fix an economy that is not broken by tanking it. And even the markets are starting to panic. Congratulations, Trump voters. The inflation and economic misery that is coming are on you. By the way, Republican lawmakers keep showing their stupidity over drone sightings, and now the GOP ignorance is putting people's lives in danger.
If they start flying drones over my district in Kentucky, if people have the ability to reach those drones with their Second Amendment capabilities, those drones are going to be removed from the air.
It may be news to Congressman Comer, but bullets fired up come back down, and they kill people. Not to be outdone in the stupidity category of this drone story is Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano of Pennsylvania. Remember him? Donald Trump endorsed Mastriano 2 years ago in a primary election.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pennsylvania loves you and America needs you. Thank you for your leadership.
Mastriano is now leading in the category of cluelessness. On X, he wrote, "It is inconceivable that the federal government has no answers nor has taken any action to get to the bottom of the unidentified drones." Below that, Mastriano wrote, "Breaking news, crashed drone in Orange Beach, retrieved from water and taken to undisclosed location for further investigation." The spacecraft strapped to the truck was actually a replica of a TIE fighter from the 1977 movie Star Wars. Anyway, check out this story at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Larry Nelson, who wrote, "This is a good distraction from the train wreck that is coming." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump already hurting the U.S. economy as investors panic over 2025.
Some did identify policy uncertainty as one of the reasons for their writing down more uncertainty around inflation. And you know, the point about uncertainty is it's kind of common sense thinking that when the path is uncertain, you go a little bit slower. It's not unlike driving on a foggy night or walking into a dark room full of furniture.
I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.